I know I've talked a lot of trash when it comes to art school. It's definitely a subjective experience. It depends on which art school you go to, who your professors are, whether or not it was 2 years into your graphic design program where you figured out you hated graphic design. But as with most things, when it comes to art school, your mileage may vary. So here are 5 things I didn't learn in art school and 1 thing I did. The first thing I didn't learn was how to paint. In my freshman year, I took both 2D and 3D design, which were prerequisites for the graphic design course that I was in. And unfortunately, that class was mostly about conceptualizing artwork instead of actually producing it. When it did come to the production part of the class, there was such little room for error. It felt less instructional and more figuring out what the professor wanted and how best to achieve that result, but without actually receiving any sort of guidance. Even in my graphic design courses, nothing was ever really explained. Even when it came to principles of art, it was more history-based, much like in high school. The discovery and development of certain paints and painting techniques isn't the same as being shown how to apply those techniques or use that knowledge. The second thing I never learned was the point of the critique. Instead of trying to look at your art objectively, see what could be improved, see what you did well, it was basically a hate fest. And honestly, even in my English classes, critique was always the worst part of the day. Obviously, your art is not going to be for everyone, and not everyone is going to be for your art, but there is a difference between pointing out things that are fundamentally incorrect, your color palette isn't exactly cohesive, versus, well, this sucks. Oh, you didn't put enough effort into this. Since I left the art and design department, I didn't have to go through as many critiques, but that certainly didn't make any of them any easier to handle. And yeah, to some extent, as an artist, you have to develop a thick skin. But at the same time, when you're given nothing but discouraging words, it doesn't really do much to bolster your self-esteem or make you feel like anything you're doing is actually worth something. Critique isn't supposed to be a tear you down to build you back up kind of thing, especially when you forget the building you back up part. Following that, the third thing I didn't learn was that it was okay to make bad art. Obviously, not everything is going to be your best work. Not everything is going to be a masterpiece. You're not going to like everything you make. People aren't going to like everything you make. And that's totally fine. And you know what else is fine? Making bad art just for the sake of making bad art. When you're first learning something, you're not going to make a masterpiece. This idea and insistence that just because you are in art school that everything you produce should be of a certain caliber or a certain quality is absolutely ridiculous. Bad art is just as valuable as good art. It's not about making something perfect, it's about gaining the experience. The point is making it. All bad art eventually leads to better art, which then leads to good art. I took a lot of drawing classes. The one thing that always bothered me, nobody ever taught you what to do with blending steps. What are you supposed to do with these? How do you clean them? Are you supposed to unravel them? Unwrap them? No, you got a sanding block. You take the sanding block and you sand it until it's clean. Good as new. The last thing they didn't bother to teach us in art school was business. Whether you want to start your own store, you want to approach galleries to show your work, you want to do freelance, none of that was covered at any point. There wasn't even a class on doing business as an artist. Sure, there are plenty of things that you can do online to figure it out, ask your friends, ask strangers, but I feel like actually being sat down and shown would have been so much better. Instead, at least twice a month, I panic about taxes and accidental fraud. So if that was your entire art school experience, Megan, did you learn anything at all? That's a great question, and it took me longer than I'd like to admit to have thought of any sort of value that I had gotten out of art school. The one thing it did teach me was the importance of conceptualizing projects before you begin, and being able to use critical thinking to change that path when things don't work out the way you intended. I feel like a lot of the hesitancy in the art world is knowing where to start and knowing when to start. More often than not, the when is as soon as possible, but the how gets kind of murky. This was supposed to be a faceless art channel, which I guess that ship has sailed. And the more videos I've made, the more I've realized that I'm not really a tutorial girl. My whole basis was set around making content for people having the same experience I did. Whether it was experiencing an unanticipated stall in your creativity and your ability to draw, feeling like an outcast because you're the weird one who knows way too much about vampires, or just trying to figure out how to express yourself when you're a moderately spooky person, but being spooky isn't your entire life. And most of all, I wanted to document my own journey into rediscovering the joy I felt making art. And I know that there are several people out there just like me who've reached a certain age or had certain experiences where the things that they used to love to do either no longer bring them joy or they can't seem to figure out how to get back into it. And if hearing me bitch about art school is at all helpful to you, you got it. Like I said, I'm not trying to trash on all art school. My experience is a singular experience. Other people, I'm sure, have had fantastic experiences, fantastic professors, and I just wasn't one of them. Do I regret going to art school? Yeah, a little bit. Shit was fucking expensive. But then again, like, how are you supposed to determine what you want to spend the rest of your life doing when you're 18? What did you learn in art school, or what do you wish you had learned in art school? Let me know. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Consider subscribing and sticking around. If you've got comments or suggestions, leave them in the section below, and I will see you guys next week.